Leo Tolstoy was born on September 9, 1828 in the Yasnaya Polyana estate of Tula province. He was the fourth child in a large noble family. Tolstoy was orphaned early. His mother died before he was 2 years old, and at the age of 9 he lost his father. Aunt Alexandra Osten-Saken became the guardian of the 5 Tolstoy children. The 2 older children moved to their aunt in Moscow, and the younger ones stayed in Yasnaya Polyana. It is with the family estate that the most important and dear memories of Leo Tolstoy's early childhood are connected. In 1841, Alexandra Osten-Saken died, and the Tolstoys moved to their aunt Pelageya Yushkova in Kazan. 3 years after the move, Leo Tolstoy decided to enroll in the prestigious Imperial Kazan University. However, he did not like studying. He considered exams a formality and university professors incompetent. Tolstoy did not even try to get a scientific degree. In Kazan, he was more attracted to secular entertainment. In April 1847, Leo Tolstoy's student life ended. He inherited his part of the possessions, including his beloved Yasnaya Polyana, and immediately went home without having received a higher education. In the family estate, Tolstoy tried to establish a way of life and start writing. He drew up his education plan to study languages, history, medicine, mathematics, geography, law, agriculture, natural sciences. However, he soon came to the conclusion that it was easier to make plans than to implement them. Tolstoy's asceticism was often replaced by carousing in card games. Wanting to start the right life, in his opinion, he made up a daily routine. But he did not observe it either, and in his diary he again noted dissatisfaction with himself. All these failures prompted Leo Tolstoy to change his lifestyle. The opportunity presented itself in April 1851. The elder brother Nikolai arrived in Yasnaya Polyana. At that time he was serving in the Caucasus, where there was a war. Leo Tolstoy decided to join his brother and went with him to a village on the banks of the Terek River. Leo Tolstoy served on the outskirts of the empire for almost 2.5 years. He spent his time hunting, playing cards, and occasionally participating in raids on enemy territory. Tolstoy liked such a solitary and monotonous life. It was in the Caucasus that the story Childhood was born. While working on it, the writer found a source of inspiration that remained important to him until the end of his life. He used his own memories and experiences. In July 1852, Tolstoy sent the manuscript of the story to the magazine Savremenik and attached a letter. "I look forward to your verdict. He will either encourage me to continue my favorite activities, or make me burn everything I started." Editor Nikolai Nekrasov liked the work of the new author, and soon Childhood was published in the magazine. Inspired by the first success, the writer soon began to continue Childhood. In 1854, he published a second novella, Boyhood, in the magazine Savremenik. The main thing is literary works. At the end of 1854, Leo Tolstoy arrived in Sevastopol, the epicenter of military operations. Being in the thick of things, he created the story Sevastopol in the month of December. Although Tolstoy was unusually frank in describing battle scenes, the first Sevastopol story was deeply patriotic and glorified the bravery of Russian soldiers. Soon Tolstoy began working on the second story, Sevastopol in May. By that time, nothing remained of his pride in the Russian army. The horror and shock that Tolstoy experienced on the front line and during the siege of the city greatly influenced his work. Now he was writing about the senselessness of death and the inhumanity of war. In 1855, from the ruins of Sevastopol, Tolstoy went to exquisite St. Petersburg. The success of the first Sevastopol story gave him a sense of purpose. "My career is literature, to write and write. From tomorrow I work all my life or I give up everything, rules, religion, decency, everything." In the capital, Leo Tolstoy finished Sevastopol in May and wrote Sevastopol in August 1855. These essays completed the trilogy. And in November 1856, the writer finally left military service. Thanks to the truthful stories about the Crimean War, Tolstoy entered the St. Petersburg literary circle of the Sovremennik magazine. During this period, he wrote the story Blizzard, the story Two Hussars, finished the trilogy with the story Youth. However, after a while the relationship with the writers from the circle deteriorated. I'm sick of these people, and I'm sick of myself. To unwind, at the beginning of 1857 Leo Tolstoy went abroad. He visited Paris, Rome, Berlin, Dresden. He got acquainted with famous works of art, met with artists, watched how people live in European cities. The journey did not inspire Tolstoy. He created the story Lucerne, in which he described his disappointment. In the summer of 1857, Tolstoy returned to Yasnaya Polyana. In his native estate, he continued to work on the story Cossacks, and also wrote the story Three Deaths and the novel Family Happiness. In his diary, Tolstoy defined his purpose for himself at that time. The main thing is literary works, then family duties, then household. And so to live for yourself, for a good deed a day, and that's enough. In 1859, Tolstoy founded schools for peasant children in Yasnaya Polyana and in the vicinity of the village. A year after their opening, the writer went abroad again to find out how popular education is arranged in European schools and how to do it so that, without knowing anything, he could teach others. After 9 months of European travel, he returned to Russia. Tolstoy wanted to create his own system of education in the Yasnaya Polyana school. He abolished all the rules of discipline and cancelled pedagogical programs. In 1862, the writer began publishing a pedagogical magazine Yasnaya Polyana with books for reading. Later he wrote ABC and New ABC, with his own stories and authors' transcriptions of fairy tales and fables. To love and be so happy. In Tolstoy's artistic work at this time there was a crisis. In his diaries, he increasingly expressed dissatisfaction with life, indecision, idleness, longing, the thought of death. We need to get out of this. One remedy. An effort to work on yourself. In 1862 Leo Tolstoy found a way out of despondency. I am writing from the village. I am writing and I hear the voice of my wife upstairs, who is talking to my brother and whom I love more than anything in the world. I lived to be 34 and didn't know that it was possible to love so much and be so happy. The bride of the writer was 18-year-old Sophia Bears. The writer lived with her for 48 years. During the marriage, they had 13 children. Sophia became the secretary, copyist and unofficial editor of Leo Tolstoy. During this period of mental balance, Leo Tolstoy began writing the novel War and Peace, a large-scale epic. The basis for peaceful everyday scenes was the life of the Tolstoy family. The writer created battle and civil scenes based on the events of Russian history. The main idea of the work was not patriotism, but pacifism. The author's fierce protest, expressed back in the Sevastopol stories, prompted him to describe the troubles that the war entails. In 1869 Tolstoy completed War and Peace. The book was a huge success. By the early 1870s, Tolstoy was considered one of the greatest Russian writers, but he was at odds with himself. The nobleman and landowner were concerned about social inequality in Russian society, the poverty of peasants and the uncompromising Tsarist regime. Besides, Tolstoy began to get sick. In 1871, Tolstoy went to Samara province. On the recommendation of a doctor, he was treated with kumis. He was so inspired by the steppe nature and the life of Bashkir nomads that he brought his whole family here for the summer of 1873. Samara has become a refuge and a source of inspiration for the writer. After a family trip, he again took up the novel Anna Karenina, which he began in the spring of 1873. Tolstoy both loved and hated this work, which became very personal for him. My Anna bored me like a bitter radish, but don't tell me bad things about her, or, if you want, then with management, with caution. Editor's note, she is adopted after all. In 1877 Tolstoy finished Anna Karenina. It was a dark novel. It did not have the idyll that was present in the finale of War and Peace. To be content with little and do good to others. In the early 1880s, at the height of his success, Leo Tolstoy renounced his literary past and the ideal of family life. A period of spiritual and moral search began for him. Tolstoy wrote philosophical treatises in which he discussed life, art, and religion. Among them are Confession, So What Should We Do, About Hunger, What Is Art, What Is My Faith, The Kingdom of God Is Inside You. The writer rejected the dogmas of the Russian Orthodox Church and even created his own version of the Gospel. He combined the four Gospels into one, removed everything he disagreed with, such as all the stories about miracles, and left only the words of Christ. What Tolstoy wrote about did not become an abstract philosophy. He intended to live according to his words. Under the influence of Leo Tolstoy's ideas, a whole religious and ethical trend arose in Russia: Tolstoyism. In addition to treatises, Tolstoy also wrote works of fiction, a story about the search for the meaning of life, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, a story about a righteous recluse, Father Sergius, a play about hopelessness, A Living Corpse, a story about the tragic death of Naib Shamil Haji Murad. In 1899, Tolstoy wrote the novel Resurrection. In this work, the writer criticized the judicial system, the army, and the government. The contempt with which Tolstoy described the institution of the church in the novel Resurrection provoked a response. In February 1901, the Holy Synod published a decree in the journal Church Gazette on the excommunication of Count Leo Tolstoy from the church. This decision only increased Tolstoy's popularity and attracted public attention to the ideals and beliefs of the writer.